There is an orchid called the bee orchid, the Aphrys apifera, that evolved to look so much like one certain type of bee, one certain type of female bee, that the male bees would be attracted to it and come say hi and pollinate it. The bee orchid has been doing this mimicry for tens of millions of years. And in most places where it grows, that type of bee is long gone. It would have gone extinct before humans even got there. Yes. So we don't know for sure what the bee even looked like. The flowers now pollinate themselves, and they remain the only evidence we have, not just of what the bee looked like. This is the fascinating part. They are our evidence of what the bees looked like to each other. How the bees would have seen one another, something we can otherwise never know, even if they were still here, what the bees found most beautiful. And whenever these flowers appear, which can be sporadic and unpredictable, either way, year after year, they still display this dying and mysterious beauty, even though its original function no longer even works. I used to think that flower communion was kind of a shame, that all these beautiful flowers that will only bloom once, that have spent all springtime growing into this beauty, all these flowers had been picked only to die. But as I walked along the Amazon Creek yesterday picking the blue camas flowers, I meditated on how many of them there seemed to be. Camas flowers tend to fill up entire meadows if not discouraged by mowing and fences. And so not every flower can or will reproduce. In fact, some of them are just there to fill up the meadow so that the bees will notice all of them. And some of them will get pollinated and be successful. Most camas flowers are just there to be with other camas flowers. That's their job. So I got to thinking, arguably, reproduction is only one reason for a flower to exist, and it might not even be the main one. Not every flower winds up doing it, as it were. But the unpollinated flower is not a waste. Arguably, the main reason for a flower to be is to be beautiful. To entice some creature like a bee, a hummingbird, or a human to come, notice it, and love it. I don't know why each of these flowers evolved to look the way that they do. They're all so different, each one of them having spent eons developing this shape, this color, this height, for some reason, some flowery reason. But that, in a way, makes it the most great and glorious honor to notice one, pick it, and then consider all of them together in their diversity. Look what they have done. Much in the same way, it's hard for me to say what the best human life would look like, or even a good human life, beyond bringing your own diversity and unique spirit to the common bouquet. Simply being who you are in the rainbow of human life is, in a way, a holy act of reverence for what life is and wants to be on this earth. I don't know if plants have feelings the way that we do. We know that they don't have the neurology that we do, the nerve endings or the brains. But we know that plants do communicate. chemically and through touch. For example, trees will send out chemical signals to warn other trees that they're being cut down or there's a pest in the area. Some plants will retract when touched, and treetops, when they sense each other, will stop growing so that their branches don't overlap and shade them both. The tree canopy has little borders around each tree where there's a space for trees to give each other growing room and respect. And plants do sense things and respond. If it's dry over here, they'll send out roots over there. And they are always in motion. We like to think about plants as just being rooted and holding still, being immobile. But in fact, when we watch time-lapse videos, we can see clearly that day to day plants will track the motion of the sun, flowers will unfurl and then close up at night. Tendrils will shoot out here or there. And I know in my heart that when I see one tiny sprout coming up in a crack in the sidewalk, I feel moved by that little plant's struggle and bravery. There's something I can empathize with. I feel like putting up a tiny road cone next to each one of those sidewalk plants to make sure it doesn't get trampled. Those ones seem special for what they've overcome. And maybe I'm projecting my human feelings onto something that has no feelings. But that's what humans do, isn't it? We're so good at it that we made a national monument out of the Old Man of the Mountain, which was a big rock that looked like a face in New Hampshire. And when it fell down, and it did, we turned that into the Old Man of the Mountain Memorial Site, which is a federally protected place where something that looked like a face used to be. But if the flowers do what they do, and we do what we do, perhaps we were meant to feel for them. Supreme Court Justice William O. Douglas once argued in court that plants might in fact have legal rights within the context of human society as a whole. He wrote, "Inanimate objects," and plants are arguably not inanimate, "inanimate objects are sometimes parties in litigation." He noted a ship has a legal personality, which is a fiction found useful for maritime purposes, of course. So it should be, he writes, as respects valleys, alpine meadows, rivers, lakes, estuaries, beaches, ridges, groves of trees, swampland, or even air. Even air that feels the destructive pressures of modern technology and modern life. He writes, "The voice of the inanimate object, therefore, should not be stilled." Last year, you may have heard a river in New Zealand was granted legal personhood. Yes, meaning it can now be represented in court by legal guardians when it gets polluted, and such movements are now afoot in this country as well, to grant rivers and trees and plants legal rights. These are often led by indigenous peoples whose cultures and religions hold that we are in relationship with what is around us, something that is becoming more clear to us every day. These days, when we are faced with the dire reality of global climate change, presently, I think it's more important than ever to appreciate the flowers in their beauty and diversity, to celebrate them. Responsiveness to our environment, its worth, and our reverence for it need not consist solely of mourning. We can hold both our concern and our sorrow with our love and attention at the same time. And I would argue we must. To celebrate them, the flowers, to revere the natural world, in which we humans are also but one flowering. I can't promise that the environment will be okay, but I do believe that we can not only find meaning and beauty amidst the crisis, but that we must. The bee orchid, the Ophrys apifera, has not neglected its duty. Part of our job, as one of the most sentient and neurologically complex creatures in existence, our job is to notice and revere and bless the flowers. I'll close with this poem from Gary Snyder, which I shared at this time last year, called For the Children. The rising hills, the slopes of statistics, the steep climb of everything, going up, up, lies before us as we all go down. In the next century, or the one beyond that, they say, our valleys, pastures, we can meet there in peace if we make it. To climb these coming crests, one word to you and your children: stay together, learn the flowers, go light.